I still remember the day the galaxy underestimated us. Her name was Maria Thompson, a 7-year-old girl who had become a symbol of Earth's hope and ambition without ever intending to. She was the kind of child who saw beauty in everything, who asked too many questions, and whose boundless curiosity made even the most cynical adults smile. She believed the stars were full of wonders waiting to be discovered, and she thought the galaxy would welcome us with open arms. Her innocence made what happened all the more unbearable, all the more unforgivable. Maria was on the imperial capital world of Averis with her parents, brilliant scientists invited as part of Earth's diplomatic mission to the Galactic Empire. Humanity had recently achieved formal recognition as a fledgling member of the Galactic Council, and this trip was meant to strengthen ties between Earth and the Empire. It was supposed to be a historic moment, a step forward for our species. Maria's parents worked tirelessly, attending conferences and presenting research, while Maria wandered the sprawling city, wide-eyed at the alien wonders around her. That day, Maria had ventured into the central marketplace, a vibrant hub of life and culture. Merchants of all species displayed goods from across the galaxy, glowing crystals, delicately woven fabrics, and strange creatures in glass orbs. Maria marveled at it all, her small figure barely noticeable among the crowd. She stopped at a stall selling miniature creatures that shimmered with bioluminescent colors, enchanted by the way they pulsed with light when touched. She reached out her hand, her face alight with wonder. The Ralvan officer entered the marketplace at that moment, his imposing figure cutting through the crowd. The Ralvans were a rigid, militaristic species, and their officers commanded fear and respect wherever they went. This one, clad in black armor adorned with the imperial insignia, was no exception. He barked orders, demanding the crowd clear a path for him. To Maria, he must have seemed like another fascinating part of this alien world, something new to observe and understand. What happened next played out in seconds but would haunt humanity forever. Maria, in her innocent curiosity, didn't move quickly enough. The officer stumbled slightly as she crossed his path. Witnesses would later say she tried to apologize, her small voice trembling as she looked up at the towering figure. But the officer didn't care. He raised his ceremonial energy rod, a symbol of imperial authority, and struck her. The blow was merciless, the energy discharge fatal. Her small body collapsed to the ground. The marketplace went silent. Shock rippled through the gathered crowd, but no one dared to intervene. Maria's parents arrived moments later, their cries of anguish cutting through the heavy air. They fell to their knees, cradling her lifeless form. The officer didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He simply stated that order must be maintained and walked away. When news of Maria's death reached Earth, the reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. Every screen, every device, every network broadcast the same image: a child's lifeless body, a grieving family, and an unrepentant murderer walking away. Protests erupted in every major city, grief and rage uniting humanity as never before. Her death wasn't seen as a tragedy, it was an outrage, a wound that cut through every barrier of nationality, creed, or class. The Galactic Council issued a tepid statement of regret. Calling it an unfortunate incident, the Empire refused to acknowledge wrongdoing, claiming the officer had acted within protocol. To them, Maria was a minor inconvenience, a statistical error in the grand machinery of their rule. To us, she was everything. She was innocence. She was hope. She was the future we had dared to dream of. The Empire believed Earth would grieve and move on, as so many species had before. They didn't understand what Maria's death meant to us. They didn't understand humanity. We don't forget, we don't forgive. That day, as Maria's small casket was carried through streets lined with millions of mourners, Earth made a silent vow. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. They had stolen a child from us. They had taken the one thing humanity could never replace, and in doing so, they had made a fatal mistake. When the news of Maria's death reached Earth, the collective outrage was immediate and overwhelming. Billions of voices cried out in anger, demanding justice. Her image, that of a bright-eyed, curious child, circulated on every network, a painful reminder of what had been lost. Governments, corporations, and ordinary citizens alike united in grief, their fury aimed squarely at the Galactic Empire. Yet, despite the emotional surge, Earth's leaders knew the stakes. The Empire was vast, ancient, and immensely powerful. A war would be catastrophic, possibly unwinnable. Diplomacy had to be tried, even if the odds of success were slim. Earth's diplomats, led by Secretary General Alicia Moreau, reached out to the Galactic Council with a firm but measured message. They demanded an investigation, accountability, and punishment for the officer responsible. Moreau, a seasoned negotiator, delivered an impassioned speech before the council, her voice steady but laden with anger. Maria Thompson was not just a child of Earth, she said. She represented the future of humanity, a bridge between our species and the galaxy. Her murder cannot and will not be dismissed as a mere oversight. Her words fell on deaf ears. The Galactic Council, dominated by representatives of the Empire and its allies, offered little more than platitudes. They acknowledged the tragic nature of the incident but refused to hold the officer accountable. Instead, they suggested Earth should focus on better preparing its citizens for integration into galactic society. It was a dismissal, a thinly veiled insult wrapped in diplomatic language. To the Council, humanity's outrage was nothing more than the tantrum of an upstart species. Still, Earth persisted. Delegations were sent to the Empire itself, their mission clear to demand justice or, at the very least, acknowledgement of wrongdoing. The Imperial Ambassador, a haughty figure named Olith Vronic, received them with barely concealed disdain. His species, the Ralvan, were infamous for their rigid adherence to hierarchy and their belief in their own superiority. To Vranic, humanity was a minor annoyance, a newly inducted species that had yet to understand its place. Our officer acted within the bounds of protocol, Vranic said, his tone dripping with condescension. The child's actions, while unfortunate, disrupted order and posed a potential threat. Discipline was necessary. The statement, delivered without a hint of remorse, was broadcast across Earth's networks. The outrage it sparked was volcanic. Protests turned into riots. Calls for retaliation grew louder. In a final attempt to avoid conflict, Secretary General Moreau issued an ultimatum. Standing before the Galactic Council, she declared that Earth would not tolerate such injustice. "This is not just about Maria Thompson," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "This is about the respect owed to every human life. If the Empire refuses to act, then you leave us no choice but to act in your place." Moreau's words were met with laughter. Imperial representatives mocked her, some openly jeering. The broadcast of their reaction reached every corner of Earth. In that moment, the galaxy's disdain for humanity was laid bare for all to see. It wasn't just Maria who had been dismissed, it was all of us. When the ultimatum expired, Earth's leaders met for what would become a historic decision. Diplomacy had failed. Justice would not come through words or negotiations. The Empire had underestimated humanity's resolve, its capacity to endure pain and channel it into action. They believed us weak, fractured, and incapable of challenging their dominance. They were wrong. When the Galactic Empire ignored Earth's final ultimatum, the die was cast. Humanity had tried diplomacy, appealed to reason, and even offered compromise. Each attempt had been met with dismissal, mockery, or condescension. Maria's death was no longer an isolated incident, it had become a symbol of the Empire's disregard for human life. And so with the expiration of the ultimatum, Earth unleashed its fury. The first strike was not a declaration of war, but an act of vengeance, a precise and brutal statement that humanity would not be ignored. The target was Alexia 4, a strategically significant Imperial garrison world near the frontier of their space. Alexia 4 was a bustling hub, its surface bristling with planetary defenses and housing a massive fleet in orbit. It was considered untouchable, a symbol of the Empire's unchallenged dominance. That made it the perfect target. Humanity's fleet, designated Retribution 01, was not large by galactic standards. It didn't need to be. Decades of quiet preparation and technological advancement had created ships designed to exploit the Empire's overconfidence. Stealth systems, advanced AIs, and weapons that combined brute force with surgical precision made the fleet a force unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Humanity had studied the Empire's tactics, their strengths, and more importantly, their blind spots. The fleet emerged from hyperspace without warning, bypassing Alexia 4's formidable sensor network. The opening salvo was devastating. Orbital defense platforms, thought impenetrable, were obliterated within moments. Swarms of autonomous drones poured out from human carriers, overwhelming the Empire's forces with sheer speed and coordination. Each strike was calculated, each target chosen for maximum effect. On the surface, chaos erupted as military installations were systematically dismantled by precision bombardments. Imperial soldiers, long accustomed to facing unorganized resistance from subjugated worlds, were unprepared for the sheer ruthlessness of humanity's assault. Entire garrisons were wiped out before they could even mount a defense. The most dramatic moment came when the Imperial flagship Dominator, a colossal vessel bristling with weaponry, was targeted. It was a symbol of the Empire's might, its destruction unthinkable. Yet within minutes of engagement, human forces had disabled its engines and shredded its defenses. A final missile strike split the ship in half, its wreckage spiraling into Alexia 4's atmosphere in a fiery cascade. By the time the Empire's reinforcements arrived, it was too late. The human fleet had already withdrawn, leaving nothing but ruin in its wake. The planet's strategic value was reduced to ashes, its defenders humiliated. In the aftermath, a single message was transmitted from Earth to the Galactic Empire for Maria. The Empire's response was swift and predictable. They declared humanity a rogue species, an existential threat to galactic stability. Every resource at their disposal would be mobilized to crush Earth. They believed this would intimidate us, that the prospect of annihilation would bring us to heel. But they didn't understand. Alexia 4 was just the beginning. To humanity, war was not something to be feared, it was something we understood deeply, something we had been perfecting for millennia. The Empire had fired the first shot when they took Maria's life. Now, we would ensure they felt the full weight of our wrath. The galaxy believed Earth was a fledgling world, still naive in the ways of interstellar conflict. What they didn't realize was that, in striking us, they had awakened a beast. And that beast was only beginning to stretch its claws. The attack on Alexia 4 was a resounding success, but it was only the beginning. Humanity knew that the Empire's retaliation would be swift and merciless. To survive, Earth had to transform, and it had to do so quickly. What followed was one of the most extraordinary mobilizations in human history, a complete reorientation of society toward the singular purpose of war. Earth's governments declared a state of total war, enacting emergency measures that bypassed bureaucracy and streamlined every system for efficiency. Factories that once produced consumer electronics were retooled overnight to manufacture warships, drones, and weapons. Civilian engineers became military contractors, farmers began growing crops designed to sustain soldiers on prolonged campaigns. Even the entertainment industries pivoted, creating propaganda and morale-boosting media to keep the population united. Every man, woman, and child had a role to play in the survival of the species. Earth's military leadership, operating under the newly formed Global Defense Command, coordinated the war effort with a precision that reflected centuries of human experience in conflict. Humanity had learned from its own history, from the grueling wars of the past that had devastated nations and shaped civilizations. Now those lessons were turned outward, directed at an enemy far greater than anything humanity had ever faced. At the heart of Earth's war machine was innovation. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, pushing the boundaries of technology to give humanity an edge. Faster-than-light communication networks were enhanced to outpace the Empire's own systems, ensuring that human fleets could coordinate across vast distances in real time. AI systems, designed to assist rather than replace human commanders, analyzed enemy strategies and suggested countermeasures with stunning accuracy. New weapons were developed: hyperkinetic railguns, plasma lances, and nanotech warheads capable of dismantling ships at the molecular level. But humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology, it was its adaptability. The Empire, with its vast resources and rigid hierarchy, was slow to react to unconventional tactics. Humanity, by contrast, thrived in chaos. Guerrilla warfare became the cornerstone of Earth's strategy. Small, nimble fleets would strike at supply lines and hyperspace relay stations, crippling the Empire's logistics. Cyber warfare teams infiltrated Imperial networks, spreading disinformation and sowing confusion among their ranks. In some cases, human operatives turned the Empire's own systems against them, hijacking their automated defenses to fire on friendly ships. The war wasn't fought solely in space. On occupied worlds, resistance movements sprang to life, inspired by humanity's defiance. These insurgents, often equipped and trained by human operatives, became a thorn in the Empire's side. They struck at military outposts, sabotaged factories, and rallied the oppressed. For every Imperial victory, a dozen smaller defeats chipped away at their morale and resources. Earth's transformation wasn't without cost. The strain of total war was immense. Cities that had once been bustling centers of culture became hubs of production, their skylines dominated by towering factories and barracks. Families were separated as loved ones went off to fight or work in distant facilities. And while the unity of purpose brought humanity together, it also demanded sacrifices that some found difficult to bear. Yet through it all, the memory of Maria burned brightly. Her image became a rallying cry, her name a chant that echoed across battlefields and assembly lines alike. For Maria, it wasn't just about avenging her death, it was about proving to the galaxy that humanity would not be broken. As the war machine of Earth roared to life, the Empire began to realize the scope of their miscalculation. They had believed humanity to be a minor inconvenience, a fledgling species barely worth their attention. What they had awakened instead was a relentless force of nature, a species that had turned its grief into resolve and its anger into strength. Earth was no longer fighting for justice. It was fighting for survival. And in doing so, it had become something the galaxy had never seen before: a unified humanity, bound by purpose, driven by the unshakable belief that it would never again allow itself to be underestimated. As the war escalated, the Galactic Empire's leaders began to grasp the enormity of their mistake. What they had dismissed as an unruly species was proving to be a relentless adversary. Humanity fought with an intensity and ingenuity that defied expectation. They struck with surgical precision, adapting to every countermeasure the Empire deployed. What made the humans so dangerous wasn't just their technology or tactics, it was their tenacity, their refusal to back down even when outnumbered and outgunned. The Empire's counteroffensive was brutal. Entire fleets were dispatched to human-occupied worlds, leaving trails of destruction in their wake. Earth's colonies, scattered across the stars, bore the brunt of the retaliation. The Empire's ships, massive and heavily armed, rained destruction on planets that refused to capitulate. Cities were turned to rubble, millions displaced or killed. But for every colony that fell, two more rose in defiance. The Empire couldn't understand why humanity didn't break. To them, resistance in the face of overwhelming power was madness. Humanity's answer was simple survival. Earth's forces weren't just fighting for territory or resources, they were fighting for their existence. The loss of a single human life was felt deeply, fueling the collective rage that drove them forward. Every bombed city, every lost colony was another reason to fight harder, to strike deeper into the heart of the Empire. The humans didn't play by the rules the Empire had come to expect from their wars of conquest. Rather than stand and fight in conventional battles, they waged a war of attrition. Small, mobile fleets infiltrated Imperial space, targeting supply chains, resource depots, and communication hubs. These strikes, though seemingly minor, disrupted the Empire's carefully maintained logistical web. Ships arrived late to battles, reinforcements were delayed, and entire fleets were left stranded without fuel or supplies. The Empire's admirals, accustomed to facing subjugated species that crumbled under their might, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Human commanders were unpredictable, using tactics that ranged from historical naval strategies to methods that defied logic. They would appear in systems thought secure, deliver devastating blows, and vanish before the Empire could mount a response. The psychological toll on the Imperial military was immense. Stories began to spread among their ranks of human fleets that struck like ghosts, their ships appearing out of nowhere and disappearing into the void. On the ground, the resistance was no less fierce. On worlds occupied by the Empire, human insurgents waged guerrilla wars that turned entire planets into battlefields. They used the terrain to their advantage, striking at Imperial patrols, sabotaging facilities, and rallying local populations to their cause. The Empire's attempts to crush these uprisings only fueled the flames, as their heavy-handed tactics drove more species to side with humanity. As the war dragged on, cracks began to form within the Empire itself. The strain of fighting a determined enemy on multiple fronts was immense. Resources were stretched thin, and political divisions that had long simmered beneath the surface began to erupt. Some species within the Empire, resentful of their subservience to the Ralvans, saw humanity's defiance as an inspiration. Minor revolts began to break out on the fringes of Imperial space, further dividing their attention. For Earth, these cracks were opportunities. Diplomatic channels were quietly opened to disaffected factions within the Empire, offering support in exchange for information or covert assistance. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war of weapons, it was fighting a war of ideas. The message was clear: the Empire was not invincible, and resistance was not futile. Even as the Empire unleashed its might, humanity refused to falter. Their fleets pressed deeper into enemy territory, their resolve growing stronger with every battle. The Empire had underestimated them, believing they could crush humanity as they had so many others. But humans were different. They didn't just endure hardship, they thrived on it, turning adversity into strength. The Empire had started this war with the assumption that humanity was weak, disorganized, and insignificant. Now they were beginning to understand the truth. Humanity was none of those things. They were relentless, resourceful, and above all, united in their determination to never again be dismissed. For every system the Empire attacked, humanity struck back harder, each victory a step closer to the heart of Imperial power. The war was no longer about Maria's death. It was about proving that humanity would not be broken no matter the cost. As the war raged on, the balance of power began to shift. What had started as a one-sided conflict in the Empire's favor was transforming into something unthinkable: a stalemate. For every planet they raised, every fleet they deployed, the Empire found itself bleeding resources and losing ground. Humanity's relentless assault on their supply lines, their sabotage of hyperspace relays, and their psychological warfare had sown chaos throughout the Imperial ranks. The mighty machine of conquest that had subjugated countless species was faltering under the pressure of a single, defiant adversary. Earth's leaders had never intended to merely survive this war. Their goal was clear from the outset: the destruction of the Empire's capacity to dominate. To achieve this, humanity's forces turned their attention to the core systems of Imperial space. The Empire's vast power was concentrated in a few key worlds, planets that served as hubs for their military, economic, and political strength. If these worlds could be destabilized, the entire structure of the Empire would begin to crumble. The first of these targets was Unrelenting, a critical industrial hub where ships, weapons, and other military supplies were produced on a massive scale. Humanity's fleet launched a daring assault, striking not just the planet's orbital shipyards, but also its surface infrastructure. Stealth bombers infiltrated the atmosphere, deploying nanotech payloads that dismantled factories molecule by molecule. By the time Imperial reinforcements arrived, Unrelenting was in ruins, its production capacity reduced to ashes. The loss sent shockwaves through the Empire, not just for the material damage, but for what it represented: humanity's ability to strike at their very heart. Meanwhile, Earth's diplomats continued their covert operations, reaching out to dissident factions within the Empire. These efforts bore fruit as several minor species began to openly rebel, emboldened by humanity's defiance. The uprisings were small at first, isolated acts of resistance that were quickly crushed. But as humanity's victories mounted, so too did the courage of these rebels. Entire systems began to break away, declaring independence from the Empire and aligning themselves with Earth's cause. What had once been a unified juggernaut was now splintering, its once loyal subjects questioning their place in the hierarchy. The psychological toll on the Empire's leadership was immense. The Ralvan ruling class, who had long seen themselves as invincible, now faced the reality of a prolonged and costly war. The Emperor himself, a figure rarely seen or heard from, was forced to address the situation publicly. His speech, broadcast across the galaxy, was meant to rally the Empire's forces and reassert their dominance. Instead, it revealed cracks in the facade. The Emperor's words were laced with desperation, his demands for loyalty coming across more as pleas than commands. For humanity, the speech was a turning point. It confirmed what Earth's leaders had suspected: the Empire was vulnerable. The once mighty force that had dismissed humanity as insignificant was now reeling, its arrogance shattered. The war was far from over, but the tides had turned. On the front lines, humanity's soldiers and sailors fought with renewed vigor, inspired by the knowledge that their sacrifices were making a difference. They were no longer the underdogs, but a force to be reckoned with, capable of standing toe-to-toe with the most powerful empire in the galaxy. For every battle won, for every system liberated, the memory of Maria and the countless lives lost drove them forward. This war was not just about survival, it was about justice, about proving to the galaxy that humanity would never again be underestimated. As Earth's forces prepared for the next phase of their campaign, the Empire scrambled to adapt. But for all their might, for all their resources, they couldn't replicate what made humanity so dangerous. The Empire fought with protocol and tradition. Humanity fought with heart, with a unity forged in grief and tempered by determination. The galaxy was learning what it meant to face a species that refused to kneel, and the Empire was learning the cost of underestimating humanity. The war's final chapter began not with a thunderous battle but with a quiet resolve. Humanity had brought the Galactic Empire to its knees, forcing even its most loyal subjects to question the cost of maintaining its oppressive rule. What had once seemed an insurmountable foe was now fractured, desperate, and vulnerable. Yet Earth's leaders understood that the war would not truly end until the Empire itself was dismantled. This was no longer a fight for vengeance, it was a fight to reshape the galaxy, to ensure that no other species would suffer the same indignities that humanity had endured. The decision was made to strike at the heart of the Empire, Ralvos Prime, the capital world and seat of the Emperor. The planet was the center of imperial power, protected by fleets so vast they blocked out the stars and defenses so sophisticated they seemed impenetrable. For centuries, Ralvos Prime had stood as a symbol of the Empire's dominance, its towering spires a testament to their belief in their eternal rule. Now it would become the stage for humanity's final act. The assault was planned with a precision born of desperation and determination. Earth's fleets had grown in strength and numbers, bolstered by alliances with rebel factions and defectors from within the Empire itself. Even species that had once viewed humanity with suspicion now joined the cause, inspired by their unyielding defiance. The combined forces were a patchwork of cultures and technologies, united by a single purpose: to bring an end to the Empire's tyranny. The battle for Ralvos Prime began with an audacious move. Human stealth ships infiltrated the planet's outer defenses, disabling key systems and creating openings for the main fleet to advance. The Imperial Armada responded with overwhelming force, deploying wave after wave of ships to repel the attackers. The skies above the planet became a maelstrom of fire and steel, a chaotic dance of death that stretched across the stars. But humanity's greatest strength was its adaptability. While the Empire relied on rigid formations and predictable tactics, Earth's forces thrived in the chaos. Smaller, more agile ships darted through the gaps in the Imperial lines, striking at vulnerable targets and retreating before they could be caught. Advanced AI systems coordinated the fleet with a level of precision that outmatched even the Empire's most seasoned commanders. On the surface of Ralvos Prime, ground forces launched simultaneous strikes on key installations. Human soldiers fought alongside alien allies, their unity a stark contrast to the fear and disarray gripping the Imperial defenders. The people of Ralvos, long subjugated by their own leaders, began to rise up, emboldened by the sight of the Empire's forces faltering. The final blow came when Earth's flagship, Resolute Dawn, broke through the last line of orbital defenses. Its primary weapon, a devastating rail cannon, targeted the Imperial Palace. The shot was precise, tearing through the palace's central spire and sending it crashing to the ground. The symbolic heart of the Empire was no more. The Emperor, a figure shrouded in mystique and power, was captured alive. His surrender was broadcast across the galaxy, his once commanding presence reduced to a shadow of its former self. Humanity offered him no spectacle, no humiliating display. Instead, he was treated with the same dignity denied to Maria and so many others, a quiet but pointed statement about the values humanity stood for. With the Emperor's capture, the Empire collapsed. Its fleets, scattered and leaderless, surrendered or fled. Occupied worlds declared independence, and species long under the Empire's thumb began to rebuild. Humanity did not impose its rule, it offered support and guidance, helping to lay the foundation for a new galactic order built on mutual respect and cooperation. As the dust settled, Earth mourned its losses. The cost of victory had been immense, with countless lives sacrificed to achieve the impossible. Yet, in the face of such grief, there was also hope. Maria's name was remembered not as a tragedy, but as the spark that had united a fractured humanity. Statues of her likeness were erected across liberated worlds, a symbol of resilience in the enduring fight for justice. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had proven that even the mightiest empires could fall, that even the smallest voices could ignite revolutions. In their darkest hour, they had risen as something greater than anyone had imagined, not conquerors, but liberators, architects of a new future. And though the war was over, their message would echo for generations. Humanity would never kneel again.